They say home ownership is the American dream. You've put in years into your craft and have saved the money to own your own home, and you want a place to own and not have to pay rent. At the same time, there's nothing scarier than buying your first home. Purchasing a home, for most, will be the biggest purchase in their life. And with prices ranging between $100,000 to $1 million, making a mistake can be very costly. In this video, I'll go over some of the mistakes I made when buying my first home and what you can do to avoid those mistakes. In 2013, I bought my first home, a 2-bedroom, one and a half bathroom condo located in Southern California for $170,000. While my goal was to spend within my means and buy a home between $120,000 to $160,000, it was important for me to buy a property that was move-in ready since I had no experience with home renovation. Now in 2020, I'd consider that purchase a success because the condo was pleasant to live in, needed no major repairs, and has doubled in value since I've purchased it. Yet the process to purchase was definitely rough. These are the 3 mistakes I made when purchasing my first home. Mistake number 1, looking for a home in a market you don't understand. While I grew up in Northern California, I relocated to Southern California for my first job out of college. I was eager to become a homeowner and not pay rent. I saw several listings online that were within my budget, and after talking to a local realtor, I was excited to submit offers. Yet once I toured some of the homes, I found myself in some rough neighborhoods where I was afraid to live in. I then realized that while I can review properties on Zillow or Redfin or any mobile or web app, there was very little information about what it was like to live in that neighborhood. To avoid this mistake, I recommend researching the market. First, go to as many open houses or watch as many videos, walkthroughs as possible. Looking at different homes and neighborhoods helps you identify the aspects that you like and don't like. Read in between the lines and pay attention to aspects outside of the home, such as if the neighbors maintain their homes, if kids play in the streets, and if there's noise from a busy road. These can all be great indicators of what it would be like to live in this neighborhood. Second, talk to people who know the area well. Find out about current or upcoming developments that could impact the home in the short term and long term that could have big implications for your home value. For example, when buying my home, I noticed it was 4 homes down from a church. I went into the church, ran into the priest, and told him I was thinking about buying a home in the area. He provided his honest opinion and assured me it was a safe neighborhood. Third, understand that there is a trade-off between affordability and standard of living. It is a fact of life and something that we all have to deal with. The more you spend, the safer, quote unquote, safer you may feel. While budget may be important to you, you may be willing to spend a couple $100s more a month to live in a turnkey home in a more friendly neighborhood. Mistake number 2, holding out for the lowest purchase price. My parents raised me to be frugal. Having worked during college, lived with 5 guys in a small apartment, and just started my first real job, my goal was to make a home purchase that made sense financially. And so I submitted offers on homes and actually had my offer accepted several times. Yet I often second guess myself. I asked myself, was I paying too much? Could I find a cheaper home? Looking back, there were several homes I could have purchased that would have offered a lower price. To prevent analysis paralysis, study the market and know your financial limits. This mistake may be unavoidable. There will always be some fear with a big purchase, especially the first purchase. But to better deal with this fear, you have to know what numbers you are comfortable with and stick with it. And looking at the larger economy will help put the numbers into context. Back in 2012 to 2013, I wish I had better internalized that home prices were at record lows. While I acknowledge there were a lot of uncertainty at the time, if I had recognized that almost all homes were being sold at a discount, I would have followed through on homes where my offer was accepted. For example, that 4-unit multifamily home in Los Angeles that sold for $300,000 in 2013 sure looks like a steal right now. In addition to looking at larger macroeconomic factors, you need to be honest with yourself about how the home will work for you in the short and long term. While financials like mortgage, payment, interest, and down payment are all important, you need to think about practical factors such as maintenance, utilities, and size of your family in the short term and in the long term. For example, do you have the time and energy and money to put tender, loving care, TLC, on a home? If you are willing to put in the work, great. You'll pay less upfront and unlock a lot of value in the long term. But if not, then acknowledge that you're exchanging rock bottom prices for peace of mind, and be decisive when the perfect home does show up. Mistake number 3 is being loyal to a real estate agent that isn't loyal to you. There are thousands of realtors, so how do you know which one to pick? For me, this was especially difficult since I relocated to Southern California and had very few people to ask for referrals. I ended up choosing realtors that had positive and several reviews and ratings on Zillow and Redfin. And after going back and forth with several realtors, I ended up choosing one realtor, let's call her Amy, to help with the majority of my home search. But something didn't feel right. While the initial meet and greet with Amy was great, I often found 2 issues that always made me feel unsure. First, after the initial meet and greet, Amy would pass me off to an assistant in her office for future home walkthroughs. While I'm sure Amy was busy with more important things, this made me feel unimportant, and the assistant's lack of experience didn't help either. Second, when I was interested in homes that needed a bit of work, Amy would give me her repair estimate as a realtor that was based on her guess and was well below what a contractor that I would later contact would eventually give me. This made me feel like Amy was only interested in selling me on a home rather than my actual long-term happiness. To avoid this mistake, if something doesn't feel right, you have to learn when to call it quits. While I may sound selfish to use a realtor's time with nothing for the realtor to show for it, you need to look out for yourself and be honest with yourself about the level of service you've been receiving. My criteria for a good realtor is, does the realtor respond in a timely manner? This can take the form of emails, calls, texts. If you feel you are important and prioritized, the answer is yes. Was the realtor honest? Listen to his or her feedback and see if you can validate it with a second opinion or with other means of verification, such as a contractor estimate. If you feel they have your best interests in mind and they're not focused on getting you in any home in record time, the answer is yes here. Third, and lastly, was the realtor consistent and did he or she keep his or her promise? Think about what was promised in the initial meeting you had with the realtor and what that level of service is like 2 to 3 months later. For example, did he or she constantly follow up with you or continue to send you listings? If you feel you are at the top of the realtor's mind and their commitment has been unwavering, the answer is yes. For my home purchase, unfortunately, a lot of these questions were no. I pivoted away from Amy and ended up with a realtor named Vipul. Every email or text I sent was followed up immediately with answers or an acknowledgement that they received my note and that he was working on it. Every concern I voiced about paying too much was always followed up with comparable homes recently sold in the area. Lastly, whenever a new listing popped up, he would always email me immediately and ask if I was interested, even if we hadn't spoken for days or weeks. To recap, there's 3 main mistakes that I made in purchasing my first home. First was looking for a home in a market I didn't understand. Second is holding out for the lowest purchase price possible. And third was being loyal to a realtor that wasn't loyal to me. To combat these mistakes, like I mentioned, go to as many open houses as possible and watch as many video walkthroughs as possible. Second, talk to people who know the area well. And third, understand the trade-off between affordability and standard of living. Lessons to avoid mistake number 3 of holding out for the lowest purchase price possible. Better internalize where home prices are relative to the market and relative to history. Be honest with yourself about how the home will work for you short-term and long-term. And mistake number 3 of being loyal to a real estate agent that isn't loyal to you, the way to combat and avoid this mistake is that if something doesn't feel right, you have to learn when to call it quits. More specifically, ask yourself these 3 questions. Does the realtor respond in a timely manner? Was the realtor honest? And was the realtor consistent in keeping his or her promise to you? In conclusion, searching for my first home was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences. I made my share of mistakes by searching for a home in a market I didn't understand, holding out for the lowest purchase price possible, and working with an agent that wasn't working for me. Yet, when you're in these tough situations, you need to always keep an open mind, reflect on the challenges, and make small adjustments to ultimately arrive at the perfect home. With this video, I hope you avoid these 3 common mistakes and you're excited about your first purchase.